The next game I want to talk about is also an older game, The Battle at Kemble's Cascade. This came out in 2014 from Z-Man Games. It was designed by Anders Tierland and Ole Tierland, and the artist is Felipe Guerin and Chris Quellems. And like I said, out in 2014. And this game emulates space shooters in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, where it's a top-down view and you're moving all over the screen, shooting spaceships and getting power-ups, and so your guns get more powerful. But they brought this idea into a board game. And this was one of the early ones that I saw in one of the first couple of Gen Cons that I actually paid attention to on social media. And this game actually did have a bunch of buzz around it, and then it just kind of died, and I don't know why. But what you're doing is this game is actually really innovative, where in order to emulate that scrolling screen, you're actually scrolling cards down a track. So there's a row of 3 or 4 cards, depending on how many players there are, on a plastic, almost like a plastic railing type piece, and then you have 4 or 5 of those. And after each round, after everyone has taken a turn, you take the bottom cards out, and you take that plastic piece and move it on the top of the cards, and then you add new cards to it, and you shift everything down so the board is actually scrolling as you're playing. And so it is a module board, but the reason it's modular is because the board is made up of a bunch of cards, and those cards fit on those plastic pieces, and it has a scrolling effect to it. So that's one thing, and actually it works super well. There are things that happen if you're at the edge of the board and you get scrolled off of it, and so you're trying to fly around and shoot bad guys for points. You're ultimately trying to get points to win the game, and you get points from killing other spaceships, like the bad guys that are coming through. You get a point if an opponent dies. This is not a co-op game at all. You are leveling up your ship as you're playing, so you're getting better guns, you're getting better maneuverability, you're getting better shields as you're playing. And as you're playing, towards the end, a giant boss will come out, and this boss is giant because there'll be either 4 cards or 8 cards that all consist of one kind of boss battle that everyone's trying to fly around and maneuver the board and try and fight them. And so after that monster's off the board or dead, then the game just ends, and the person with the most points wins. This game has amazing production value. Like even the box itself, it's one of those heavy GMT style boxes and sizes. It's not from GMT, but it's that thick box, and the plastic components are fantastic. And I'm just surprised this game didn't do well. It's kind of sad because in the rule book it's like there are icons on these cards, but they don't mean anything because they'll affect future expansions, and those expansions never came. And this is 4 years ago, and so I don't think they ever will, because I just don't think this game did that well. But I super enjoyed it. We played it with 4 players. I think you can play with up to 5. And we put some 8-bit music on in the background, and we just kind of just had a fun time. It's not a heavy game. You're interested in what everyone's doing because you're trying to maneuver around this board, around obstacles, and you're shooting other spaceships, and you're trying to just outmaneuver everyone as you're playing. So it's just light. It's fun. You have achievements you're trying to get, and that's where a bunch of the points come in. And it's just a fun, light space game. I don't know. With this is a game, I think you mentioned you've never heard of it, or you didn't think it was an actual game. Does this sound familiar at all?
When we were oh no, when we were typing our show notes this evening, you started typing Battle of Kemble's Cascade, and I was like, that can't be a real game. Like,
oh, it's a game.
And you were like, oh, it's a game. And then I punched it into BGG, and I was immediately blown away by that box art cover. Do yourselves a favor right now, listeners. If you haven't heard of Battle of Kemble's Cascade, just immediately go and look at the box art and just try not to impulse buy the game on the box art alone, because there's something that I think this game does immediately within 5 seconds of looking at it that is so much better than what's happening right now. Is that we've been seeing a lot of Atari games, like not Atari games, but like Centipede, Space Commander, or was it Space Defender?
I know what you're talking about.
Space Invaders.
The Space Invaders.
Space Invaders. But we're having those types of games have, I guess, a resurgence in the board game market. And I feel like this original, like taking the essence of a game like that and creating its own unique style and visualization to it is what gets me excited to hear, well, just excited to learn more. I really wanted to hear this when I found out what it was, and it's really cool what you described to me. Sure, it plays a lot like what you would expect for a game that, where you're emulating, just a standard, top-down, airplane shooter. But to me, that's really cool. That's really cool that they did that. 2014 actually as well too. There was another game. I'm not sure if it was 2014 or later, but have you ever heard of the deck building game called Pixel Lincoln?
Oh yeah, on Kickstarter. It was right when like Boss Monster. It was like just after Boss Monster, which also kind of was part of that big resurgence in 2012, 2013.
Yeah, both of those games, Boss Monster too. Wow, that still is actually pretty. That game's going strong. Boss Monster.
I know. Still, I liked it. I had like the original edition. I got rid of it. I don't know why. I get rid of a lot of games, but it was fun though. I enjoyed it. But yeah, Pixel Lincoln is that same kind of idea or style. But this is not just based on the style. There's a lot more going on than just that style, right?
Absolutely. Pixel Lincoln, not only, it's a weird theme. It's like you're a pixelated Abe Lincoln that uses like meat for like ham hocks and steaks and like different meat things to use as weapons against your foes. Super
totally
bizarre.
Makes sense.
Super bizarre. But what I wanted to bring light to was that very similar. It wants to mimic like this 8-bit / 16-bit movement on a 2D plane, much like Mario, by having these cards that kind of come on and off the board as if you were scrolling through a 2D world. So hearing that Battle does something like that similarly is really cool as well too. That they have like this whole sliding down system that emulates that, which is really neat.
Well, and what's interesting with this one is that there are only about 8 different types of upgrades you can get, but there's different levels of those upgrades. But in one game, in no way can you get everything. And so you kind of have to choose a different path each time you play. Do you want to go more maneuverability this time, or more or stronger weapons, or kind of a blending of the two, but just be a bit weaker in both of them? So there's definitely decisions to make, and it's not just like a straightforward, the same thing's going to happen every time, because there are different difficulties of cards. So the board is getting more complex as the game goes along, but they're in different orders. There's cards that are not even in every game. So there's a lot of like replayability in this as well, like a surprising amount. It's a game that I want to even play more often now. I've played it a few times in the past few years, but it's one I definitely want to pull out more.
That's really cool. Thanks for sharing Battle of Kemble's Cascade
by Z-Man Games.